teacher. I joined Memphis City Schools in 2006, and my first position had me based at Cordova Elementary teaching CLU, but I also had classes at Berclair, and then I had a class at Macon Elementary that served Jackson and Wells Station and Berclair and students in that area. And then I moved to middle school, so I've also done middle school CLU and taught CLU reading for 6th grade at White Station Middle when they added the 6th grade. So I have experience as a CLU teacher, and I'm also a parent of 2 CLU students. One is entering the 4th grade and one is entering middle school, which blows my mind. So what we're going to do today, I want to make sure to go over some things about gifted and why we have a CLU program in Shelby County Schools. And I want to go a little quickly through the information so that we have time at the end. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And we can answer those before you leave today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. Let's see. It's opening. Well, that's not the right one. How did that happen?
Jennifer, while you are doing that,
Sure.
I want to remind everyone that we are recording this session. If you have a desire to say something, if you want to put it in the chat room, or you can just wave your hand and I will let Jennifer know that you have a question. But please do not record. I am recording it. Sometimes when we have multiple users recording, it causes a problem with the video. If you think that if you're coming in late and you think you've missed something, you can go back later, or if you're watching it and maybe you didn't hear it clearly, you will be able to go back and watch this video later multiple times. So thank you very much for being here. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Sure, thank you so much. Okay, so this PowerPoint has been uploaded to the conference app, so you can always get this information. Feel free to call anytime. If you go to our webpage, which is clu901.com, or to our Facebook page, there's contact information there. So hopefully today is the start of a conversation. You can reach out anytime, and we're here to help. These are the norms for our session that Mr. Nelson went over with us. And again, please use the chat box if you have questions. I'll make sure to review those when I can so that I can answer those questions. I know that a lot of people are here to get answers to questions, which is wonderful. I've enjoyed reading the questions you've already posted. It tells me that you are very interested in this topic, and some of you have already learned quite a bit about gifted services in the state of Tennessee. I wanted to make sure that as we're talking about this topic that we all understand what these words mean, because sometimes they're not used correctly in conversation. So gifted, if you are truly gifted, according to the state of Tennessee, you have an IQ of 123 or higher. You've actually been tested by a school psychologist or general psychologist, and you have met that threshold of the 123. Gifted services can apply to any group in the state of Tennessee that any district, any charter school, they provide gifted services. The gifted services that we provide in Shelby County is what is called CLU. So the only place you can get CLU is actually in Shelby County. We do have some charter schools that call their program CLU, but the CLU that is the 50-year-old program as of 2020 that is mentioned in many textbooks on gifted education is the one that we have in Memphis with Shelby County Schools. We're very proud of our program. We're going to talk a little bit about twice exceptional students today. And what that means is it's a student who is eligible for gifted but also has another disability. Now, there are cases where an IEP team may suspect that a student is twice exceptional, but technically they're not really 2E unless they have multiple disabilities on their IEP, or they at least have a diagnosis. Equity means equal access to goods, services, instruction, and care. That's a really big focus for us as we try to provide equity with our programming. The gifted IEP, you may have heard of an IEP, an individualized education program that is used for any child with a disability. Gifted actually does not fall under federal guidelines, IDEA. It's a state disability. There are only about 30 states in the union that have gifted IEPs. So that's something that's very special to Tennessee. And then accommodations are ways that we provide equal opportunity for a student to show what he knows and what he can do. So when we talk about these terms, this is something that you can refer to just to provide clarity. These are the questions that I hope to answer in the presentation. And again, if you have questions that are not listed here, feel free to add them to the chat. And what I've done on the slides is I've just taken each question, and then as I put content in, the questions at the top. So you don't have to write these down or refer to this. This is just the order in which we'll answer the questions. So of course, the first question is, what does it mean to be gifted? The term gifted is used in a variety of ways with different educational stakeholders, with parents, but we know that gifted students come from all racial, ethnic, and cultural populations, as well as all economic strata. They require sufficient access to appropriate learning opportunities to realize their potential. And basically, one of the things that we always have to remind everybody is that gifted students need support and guidance to develop socially and emotionally, as well as in their areas of talent. So that's some general information. If you'll notice at the bottom of the slide, what I've done is whenever I have an actual source that provides the information, I've put the link in there directly. So if you'd like to read more later, you're welcome to click those links and dive as deep as you want to go. So according to the state of Tennessee, intellectually gifted means a child whose intellectual abilities, creativity, and potential for achievement are so outstanding that the child needs their needs exceed differentiated general instruction. So what's interesting is many districts in Tennessee take this statement and they say that they can provide differentiated instruction in the regular classroom, so there's no adverse impact, there's no negative impact of leaving the child in regular education, and then they don't grant an IEP. That's something that's we're very blessed in Shelby County Schools to be supported by our school board, by Superintendent Ray. We have gotten so much support from Dr. Antonia Burt, and then of course Dr. Whitelaw, Ms. Moore, who's our executive director, to have a program where we can directly impact and support our students. That is a true blessing. We probably provide, more services in our state than any other district. What I do want to highlight, and I've put this word in red, is the word potential. Another thing that we really have got to get people to understand is when a child qualifies for gifted services, it's based on their potential for achievement. And that's really hard because sometimes they're in a situation where they haven't reached that potential yet. And we believe that by providing services through the CLUE program, we can help our children reach that potential. So there are some situations that make it very difficult to identify which students should be in CLUE and need CLUE services. And that's one of those words I want to call out. The state of Tennessee requires us for a gifted IEP to get measures in these three areas. So it's, kind of a three-prong evaluation. We're looking at achievement. So we pull TCAP, T and Ready. For the kids in middle school, we can pull that early PSAT. The school psychologist can also do a Woodcock-Johnson or a Wyatt. Those are nationally normed achievement tests. They have to score 90th percentile or above, and that's the national percentile. So even when you as a parent get your TCAP or T and Ready report, it doesn't have the national percentile on it. We actually have to work with TVOS for the state to figure out what that national percentile is. So that can be a bit confusing. That's why it's so great to connect with a CLUE teacher or to connect with me so that we can explain these things to you, because every child is different. So the information we're going over today, it's kind of general, but every child is different. We're here to help you. Creativity, this is one that is, so valued, I think, by a lot of our CLUE teachers and gifted educators, that makes these students stand out from their peers. They think outside the box, when they start brainstorming, they have a ton of ideas. I put empathy in there. One of the ways that I explain to parents about gifted, besides the intellectual piece, their five senses interpret the world more strongly than a regular person's, a typical person's five senses do. So when they hear something, they really hear it. When they feel something, they feel it really deeply. A lot of times, you know, we kind of have to balance some stories where we're trying to teach children about social and emotional, because they'll just start crying. They just feel it so strongly, and it's something that they can't help it. That's just how they interact with the world, and they're very curious. And then cognition, of course, the state requires a measure of 123 or higher. But there are two other things that I wish to share with you today, 2 points to consider that make it very difficult to identify gifted students when we're looking at those 3 prongs. One is asynchronous development, and one is Dabrowski's 5 overexcitabilities. So when we talk about asynchronous development, you'll see in this pie chart, this is the typical development. When you have a child who you know, is around that normal IQ of 100, and they're just a typical child, all of these areas, academic, motor, social, emotional, all of them develop at the same time. What you find with a gifted child, the way that their brains develop, is certain things, like you'll see in this circle, their math ability, their verbal ability, their special talent develops at a faster pace. But as you'll see, sometimes the motor, or look at that emotional, that orange triangle, or the social, they don't develop as quickly. So one of the tells for a classroom teacher as to, you know, whether a child might be gifted or not, you see them showing that potential in math and verbal, but then the emotional level is just not up there. So you know, we'll have gifted kids who'll say something and, you know, you think, gosh, you talk like a 40-year-old, and then the next moment they're throwing a tantrum and crying like a 2-year-old. You just never know where they're going to be on any given day. That is typical of a gifted child. That is something that, you know, that they can't help. That's just something that's true about them. And we have to understand as adults that intelligence and knowledge does not equal emotional maturity, understanding, and wisdom. And so we have to think about this when we write our curriculum. We try to provide those advanced standards and academic pieces, but we also have to take into account the emotional maturity of the students and what they can handle on the emotional level, because everything for them is so intense. And the thing to know too is the more gifted a child, the more likely he is to have a wide spread of abilities. So if you have your child tested for CLUE and they meet the threshold of 123, the child with an IQ of 123 is not going to have as many intensity issues as a child with an IQ of 145. So the higher that number goes, the more likely you're going to see that asynchronous development, to where one moment you're helping them with their vocabulary that's 3 years advanced, and the next moment you're rocking them in a chair because they're crying like a 2-year-old. You just never know what you're going to get. So it takes a lot of patience and understanding when you're raising a gifted child. Trust me, I know. With my 2, they're so different. And then we have these overexcitabilities. This is so interesting to me. In the 5 areas, we have intellectual, psychomotor, imaginative, sensual, and emotional. Now, what does this mean? So this is the research. You can read this. The link is at the bottom. Ian Bird is a gifted guru in the United States, and his website has a ton of great stuff. But it says a challenge for gifted individuals is that they can often be viewed negatively or pathologically, particularly in educational settings. So for example, if we think about how excited a child gets who's gifted about intellectual things and when they're learning, okay, their intense curiosity, their thirst and search is listed right here, that can cause them to struggle to sit in their seats and be still and raise their hand before they ask a question. They're typically going to just throw those questions out as they come to their brain because they're overexcited. Well, the adults in the room might interpret that as ADHD or another disability and might see that first before they think, oh, that child is gifted. So we as parents have to be very aware of these overexcitabilities so that when we advocate for our students, we can translate some of these things as we work with teachers. And we can also, just to be honest, be better parents. For example, I love this one. It says classroom implications because that's what the resource said. But these are things that I do at home. One of the things, like too many detailed questions from a student in the middle of a lesson. It could be in the middle of me cooking dinner. It could be in the middle of us getting ready to go to school. One of the things that helps gifted kids kind of calm down and focus their questions is to say, those are great questions. Why don't you go write those down and we'll try to find the answers. Or like fidgety actions causing annoying noises during work time. Sometimes the kids have psychomotor overexcitabilities. They cannot help the moving of the knee or the tapping of the pencil. And so if you offer options for moving around or teetering with objects while they're reading, believe it or not, getting that energy out helps them focus. My son had a wonderful teacher in first grade, and he just could not focus if he had to sit in the chair. So she put him at the back of the class and let him stand, and as long as he didn't disrupt anybody, he was good to go, and that's all it took for his achievement to soar. So those are some things that are so important. Even like agitated behavior over clothing, you know, sometimes some of those scratchy materials and things can cause overreaction. It's just, the more we're aware of it, the better we can address it. So taking all that into consideration, when we put it together and we get an evaluation on a child, there are times when we find that the child is twice exceptional, which means they're gifted and something else. A child can be gifted and have ADHD. We have some children with autism who are also gifted. Believe it or not, we have a lot of children with anxiety disorders who are gifted. Bipolar depression and gifted. Dysgraphia and gifted. That is one that is so difficult to explain to when you're trying to write an IEP and you're thinking about accommodations. There are kids that just cannot get all that brilliance in their brain through their hand to that pencil on that piece of paper. And we have accommodations that can support that. What's important for you to know as parents is the state of Tennessee did some research on this, and they found that at least 30% of all students identified as gifted have another disability or special learning need. And that's only the ones identified. I can't even imagine how many are not identified as gifted and have something else. So that's just something to be aware of. And to also know that if your child already has an IEP for dysgraphia, for autism, for OHI, because we don't do ADHD in Tennessee, it falls under other health impairment, you could still potentially have a gifted child. So let me also throw this out there just for your information. If your child already has an IEP, then you're not going to follow the same protocols for the universal screener and everything else that we do to identify gifted kids. What you would do is ask for an IEP meeting, and in that meeting, you can do a reevaluation and ask for the cognitive testing that is required to identify giftedness. So if your child already has a special program, you as the parent can call the meeting and get that testing done. Your protocols are a little bit different. So feel free to reach out if you have questions about that, and we can help. So again, the hard part is we don't have enough teachers that are familiar with gifted to immediately think, oh, this child is gifted. They're more likely to think, because of the overexcitabilities and the asynchronous development, that there's some other developmental issue going on with that student. So, the more sessions we can have like this, the more we can talk to people, the better we can prepare everybody to identify these exceptionalities. So this is a big question that parents have been asking, and I wanted to make sure to address how we are identifying gifted students for CLUE. So CLUE, let me back up a little bit. The state of Tennessee has an intervention model, and what that means is we have to assess at the beginning of the school year where every child is on the continuum of learning. The students that fall behind, that are in the bottom 10% of the screener, they are given extra instructional time in their area of deficit, in their area of need, to help bring them up to grade level. Well, if you look at the other end of the spectrum, the top 10%, those are the students that we want to look at for enrichment opportunities. Now, for kids in grades kindergarten, first, and second, we don't need an IEP yet based on the way our program is designed. And so we're able to take those scores and determine placement in our local program. But once a child enters third grade, and actually it's changing for next year, it's fourth grade, the child has to have an IEP. So what we found is last year we had, as everybody knows, we have a very successful screener. We had a ton of kids we needed to test, and then COVID happened. So we have not been able to test all of the kids that were on the list. And typically, in years past, if you didn't have the IEP, you couldn't go to fourth grade CLU. Well, we didn't feel it was equitable to make that decision since some kids were tested and some were not in our timeline. So we have determined that all kids who were in third grade CLU will move to fourth grade CLU next year so that we can have time to grade, to test everybody equitably. So once the child is in fourth grade and above, they have to have the IEP, which provides a more specialized educational plan for them. And the other benefit for the screener is that we actually take the data for every child in kindergarten through grade 8 to consider further evaluation for CLU. So our goal is to make sure that nobody falls through the cracks. So it could be that, you know, we got a bunch of data on your child in first grade and in second grade, and they really didn't show their potential in third grade. We want to make sure we find them in third grade. So we're going to keep looking at every child to determine when it's right to consider placement in CLU. So that's number 3. So students who may have been overlooked as having potential have an equal opportunity to obtain the academic support they need. Everybody has access to enrichment. And I will say that because our schools are really looking at every child and where they are, even my own children, I've seen their schools put in place where even if a child doesn't include, they're still getting enrichment. So everybody's, you know, getting what they need. It's a very, very good thing. The other thing is to point out that the universal screener is just the starting point, because all that does with that 10% that I was talking about is that tells us who is on grade level. Well, for gifted services, we're pulling kids who are above grade level, and let me tell you why. Especially in our elementary pullout program, we are literally pulling them out of good first instruction and reading and math. If we take a child who is on grade level and we pull them out of math once a week, their math achievement could go down. Their math grades could go down. Their math confidence could go down. That could be an adverse impact. That could be a negative experience. When we take a child who's above grade level, they've already learned everything on that grade level, and they're less likely to have an experience where their achievement goes down. Now, I will say that even with a gifted IEP, the parents and the teachers in the school have to communicate regularly to make sure that the pullout is not having a negative impact. And we do have students who, even with the gifted IEP, have put down that they will be pulled during reading but not during math, or vice versa, so that the child is really getting everything that they need. And so in order to do that, we do have to look at assessments that give us that grade level equivalent to make sure that we are pulling students who are working above grade level. So how do we serve them? We have CLU, and CLU stands for Creative Learning in a Unique Environment. We use a differentiated curriculum that dives really deep into specific topics that are of interest to students. So for example, some of the really successful units that our kids enjoy, first grade does one on tank topics. They talk a lot about fish and habitat, and their final performance task, their project, is to design a fish and put the characteristics and qualities of the animal and what habitat that animal would require to be a successful living fish. So you've got the elements of creativity and rigor and complexity with that. We have a unit on the 1960s in 5th grade where we are reading speeches that were delivered by Martin Luther King and John F. Kennedy, and looking at you know, all of the not just the civil rights movement, but all of the good things that came out of the 1960s with the space exploration and some other things. So, and just talking about kind of the counterculture, even with fashion and other things that happen, kids Love that. So those are some of the things that we do include. In elementary school, we have the enrichment pullout program. In middle and high school, we have their actual ELA English class is their CLUE class. And so they're served 1 hour per day, but both strands get 5 hours per week. We do have a situation at some schools where there are 3 or less CLUE students identified, and we provide those consultation services. What that's going to look like now that we have learned so much through doing our clue.edu, Google Classroom this spring, and our virtual CLUE camp, we're going to be able to provide the same level of support for those students on consultation, but they're going to do a lot of their learning online, and then they'll still have that 1 hour face-to-face with a CLUE teacher who can provide feedback. They do a lot of SAT and ACT prep and vocabulary and independent projects and research. But what you'll notice is for the enrichment pullout, there's no IEP required until 4th grade. For the, of course, that'll be 5th grade. Next year, we'll take all the 4th graders. But then everything else requires a gifted IEP. So the universal screening process, to be clear, is only one way that students may be recommended for a gifted IEP or individualized education plan. So that the universal screening process is basically what is the required child find procedures, and that's how the district goes out and tries to search for students. The other way is if there's a student whose needs exceed differentiated general education programming, then a parent or a teacher can request individual screening. And so when that happens, we have checklists, we have data that we pull, and we can screen the student individually and then have a team discussion as to whether or not we're going to move forward with that comprehensive assessment. And so that takes, again, it takes a team to make that decision. The team is usually made of the parent, the classroom teacher, a CLUE teacher, or me, the CLUE supervisor, and an administrator at the school. So it's a team decision for CLUE, just like it is for any other disability that we serve in Shelby County schools. So just so you know, a gifted IEP is a legal document. It outlines current levels of performance, annual goals. There are accommodations that are listed. We put in the service hours to support the disability. It's created through input given by the team, and it's reviewed every year as long as the child remains eligible. The other thing to know as a parent is anybody on the team can call an IEP meeting at any point in time. So if you create an IEP, but then you want to make adjustments to the goals or the accommodations, or you want to go back and talk through how the child is being served, you just call another IEP meeting, and then we create what's called an addendum, and we can make adjustments to that IEP. It's a living, breathing document. It's never set in stone. It can always be tailored to meet the needs of your child. Accommodations are in 4 different categories. So you can have a variation in time, of input, of output, and of size. Let me show you what applies to CLUE. The 2 accommodations that are appropriate for all gifted students are pacing and compacting. So pacing is a variation in time. So for example, gifted students should be allowed to move faster. So let's say that their teacher has planned a unit on physical science and she's going to spend 4 weeks on it. Well, your gifted student starts the lessons and realizes, I'm not learning anything new, I know this. The teacher could potentially take that same test that she's going to give in 4 weeks, give it to the CLUE kid, the gifted child early, make note of what they've already mastered, let them fast track through what they don't know, let them do an extension research project on things that move beyond what's going to be on that test in 4 weeks, and individualize and differentiate their program that way. The IEP allows the teacher to do that, okay, as needed. So it's not with everything, but just wherever it's appropriate. Compacting is kind of a little bit different, but compacting, when the child demonstrates an above average level of proficiency, they can skip further repetitive practice. So I'm just going to be honest with you. My daughter, there have been a couple times when she brings home a math worksheet and it has 30 problems on it, and they're all the same. They're all multiplication or they're all multiple digit addition. And she does the first 5 and she gets them all right and she knows how to do it. She didn't need to do all 30 problems. So I've actually written at the bottom, this assignment has been compacted for my child. Done. Now that takes a lot of communication with the teacher. She and I had already discussed in the IEP meeting that that was something that, you know, we wanted to make sure, because when we're able to cut the amount of time it takes for that repetitive practice, then the gifted child is able to use that time that's saved in their area of interest or in their special needs. So then they can, you know, spend more time practicing piano. They can spend more time in, you know, practicing basketball or, you know, researching in a different subject area. So these are accommodations that all gifted students should have. And in their IEP, they should have it for all subject areas, not just reading, not just for Clue. These accommodations, because a gifted child is gifted all day long. They're not just gifted in their English class. They're gifted when they go to their math class. They're gifted when they go to their history class. So these accommodations should be applicable in the IEP all day long. And the other reminder that we have to, you know, share with our IEP teams, accommodations are an IEP team decision. So just because pacing and compacting are our standards, we do have gifted kids who do not have another disability on their IEP. They are only gifted. But because of what we know about them and because we know they have anxiety, they might need extended time on their assignments or with testing. Because we know that they've mastered all of 3rd grade math, they may need to go to 4th grade math. Because we know that their brain works faster than their hand and they can't copy everything that's on the board, we write in the IEP that the teacher provides photocopies. So whatever the need is for the child, we can put that in the IEP if the IEP team thinks it's appropriate for that child. So here are the best ways for you to support your gifted students. Of course, attend IEP meetings, and that communication with your Clue teacher is so important. Clue teachers are your advocates on campus. They can usually be the first ones to start conversations with their your child's other teachers, their colleagues, to point out things. That's very important. And then I listed some organizations and websites. The National Association for Gifted Children, the NAGC, love them. They have been around for a long time. They have a lot of research and good parent resources on gifted students. That's a great resource. The Tennessee Association for the Gifted does have some parent advocacy events and resources. And then, of course, our website for Clue. So that's all that I have in what I wanted to make sure to share with you. I do want to take some time now and make sure that I've answered some of your questions. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can pull up the chat and see if there are any questions. I see a couple. Yay. I'm going to try to go all the way up to the top. Thank you all so much for being here and for, you know, just being interested in helping us advocate for our students. Okay, so Elizabeth asked, what websites would you suggest to challenge a Clue student during the summer for Rising Ninth? Okay, so one of the things that we have, you know what, I'm going to go back and see if I can share my screen. I may not be able to because I don't have it up. One of the things that we did during the, sorry, I'm having some technical issues.
So Jennifer, while you are getting that, I just want to remind people, please do not log off. We need you to go back to the Hoover homepage and do the survey for us. Also, when Jennifer finishes, I am going to have a prize at the end, so please stand by. Thank you very much.
Yes, and I put the link to the session survey in the chat, so if you want to go there. So I can answer this quickly. We created a website called learn901.com. So we have Clue 901, we have Learn 901, and there are a bunch of different websites and things there. We have created a portal for summer reading. We do have assigned summer reading for students entering grades 6, 7, 8, and 9. And I emailed the parents. If your email was in PowerSchool, then I have it. If not, feel free to reach out. I can send it. But we have a portal that has videos and graphic organizers and things to help the students with their summer reading. There are some other suggestions we're building. There's not a lot out there for gifted high school, and I think the reason is that's when all of our gifted students start taking pre-AP and AP classes. And so a lot of people think that that acceleration is all that, you know, the gifted kids need, and we know we need a little bit more than that. So we're definitely working on that, Elizabeth. That's a great question. And I'll work with my team and see if we can get some more there. Yes, I think, James, you can help me with this. There's a question about, since the session's being recorded, how is it going to be shared? How can people go back? Oh, you said you'll be able to review all the sessions. Okay. Is that in the app only, James? Do you know?
It's right now, it's only going to be available in the Hoover. You'll be able to do this all over all day. But we'll also, in the coming weeks, make it available on our website, on SES website.
Great. And Amanda, I see your comment about sharing the recording with your husband to talk about the insight into your daughter's behavior. My mother has always told me that if you keep having children, you're going to have one of each, and that is so true. My two gifted kids are so different. And I used to say that my daughter was a textbook gifted child. That doesn't even exist anymore. All of our gifted kids are so different. And I'm telling you, it goes back to that asynchronous development where they all have different needs and different intensities, those emotional intensities. I mean, you just can't stop learning enough. There's so much out there. Oh, Krista, that's a great question. Okay, so we are still pulling data from the spring screening and looking at that. We are having a bit of a challenge because some of the data we've been told is not reliable, and we're working on how to assess some of that. And I know that our intervention team is trying to figure out, because they have to screen everybody to figure out interventions, what that's going to look like in the fall. So we'll be working very closely with them to figure out what that process is going to look like. And I promise as soon as we know anything, we're going to share it. There's so many unknowns right now. My advice, what I try to do is update clue901.com, which is our webpage, and try to put as many updates and details as I can there. So that's a great place to review. And then I'm going to make sure that the Clue teachers assigned to each school have that information, and you can always reach out to them directly. Miss Franklin, I love your question. What's Clue going to look like? So we have so many different scenarios we're working on. Of course, we're hoping we can be in person. We miss our children. We miss having that interactive discussion and being able to read body language and excitement. Such a big deal, right? I have a feeling, though, however, that some of our services will be provided online. One of the things that we learned through Clue Camp was how much our kids enjoyed the Google Meets and actually having some FaceTime with their peers and with their teacher and getting to do things in an interactive way. So I'm hoping we're at least going to have a hybrid where the Clue teacher can be in person for some and maybe virtual for others. What's going to determine that is our guidelines from OSHA on keeping everybody safe, as far as what rooms we can go in and out of, how we pull kids, because there's, if they have to be quarantined in a room and then pulling them to combine a class can actually cross-contaminate groups. So all of those things have to be considered, which is why I'm thinking it's probably going to be a hybrid model, but we don't have anything for sure. What we're planning right now is we're building everything for online, but in a way that we could very easily download it or print it out or display it on a smartboard if we're in person. So we're kind of planning for both.
We have 4 minutes.
Okay. I'm hoping that answers the questions. I wish I had more information. Oh, I'm so glad your child enjoyed Clue Camp. The teacher, I'm getting ready to send a survey. I haven't had time to get it approved yet, but we want to send a survey to our parents just to find out what was really helpful for them. I honestly think that some of their favorite moments were from what we had with Virtual Clue Camp. We had an hour in the morning where everybody met together and we set the stage and we shared instruction. But then in the afternoon, as the kids were working on some of our online activities, the teacher would hold office hours. So the teacher goes into Google Meets and it's totally up to the kid whether or not they want to log in. And we had some of our best memories, I think, from those office hours. We had parents come on. There was one parent, he played his saxophone and his son played with him for the rest of the class. We had some students sharing, their screen to show their Minecraft world or things they had created. And it was just such a wonderful way for them to reach out to their peers during all this quarantine stuff. So thank you so much. We had a great Clue Camp. And I'm gonna be honest with y'all, that was our pilot program for what might have to happen in the fall so that we could work out some kinks and provide everything in a safe virtual way. So we're very excited about that. Any other questions from the group? I'm looking in the chat. I'm also going into the app because I have 2 minutes. I'm just so excited y'all are here today. You can tell I like talking about this stuff. It's just so interesting, and I'm always learning too. I mean, even though, I do this work, I'm always reading something. In fact, and I'll end on this note, I'm working on my doctorate in instructional design because it's something that I just love. And I did some reading recently where the parent is a better identifier of giftedness than the teacher, which makes sense because the kids live with you, right? So the more we can talk to parents and educate them and support them, I think will help a lot. I see a hand raised. Let's see. James, can we let Candace McGolden ask her question?
I'm going to ask Candace if you would, if you could send your, because we have to end exactly at 11.
James, it says the administrator has turned off my comments. I haven't been able to comment at all in the comment section. Yeah, so that was my first question. My second comment is to say that Clue Camp was amazing. My husband and I were so impressed. My incoming third grade daughter had the best week with you guys. It was so well organized. Every day the directions were clear. I loved the platform that you guys used. I mean, everything about it was just right on. And so thank you guys for all of your hard work on that. It was, we talked about how it must have been just, we don't even know how much time we were on the first week. So we were your true test week. And her third grade, it went so smoothly. So thank you guys so much. It was wonderful. It made us hopeful for the fall and what might have to come. So that's all I really wanted to say. Plus my comments are off. So I couldn't say it here.
I appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
Before you all jump off, again, Jennifer, thank you so much. You did an excellent job. The first person to answer in the chat room this question: when will Shelby County Schools begin school this fall? First person to answer, I have a free gift for you. Way to go, way to go, way to go. I see the answers. And the first person to answer was Miss Freeman. Way to go. And so August 10th is the day. I'm sorry. Can you see me? August 10th is the date, and we look forward to seeing each of you. Again, please stay tuned with us. Contact Jennifer if you need to, or you can contact our office, the FACE office, Family Community Engagement, 416-7600. Again, thank you so much. So now we're going to log off, and if you would, go to your next session.
Thank you, everyone.